Hello and welcome to Dawn Chorus Writes, a Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction and audio fiction. This is Jheqia's Wednesday, and this is the Mistletoe Chronicles, part of Holiday Magic Season. So it's written by Jheqia but narrated by me, Dawn. Hello. Massive shout out to River for her beautiful, stunning artwork in the thumbnail. That's going to be changing for the rest of the ships. And the other chapters to come, the other parts. So all her information is down in the description. Go and give her some festive love. Send me some love by smashing that like button. Also, Jheqia's information is down in the description below. So go and send her some love. And comment down below what you think of it so far and what's going to be happening next. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future ones. And just also give you a little warning, you might have some ambience of weather stuff behind because it's currently storming again in Scotland, so there might be some rain noises and stuff, and it's not added in, it's just the weather. So I hope you enjoy A Christmas Confession, part of the Mistletoe Chronicles. A Christmas Confession. Ladybug, Marinette's POV. Ladybug stood outside the Grand Paris Hotel on Christmas Eve, waiting for a partner to show up. The heroes of Paris had been invited to the mayor's annual Christmas party, the first real formal event the duo had agreed to attend since becoming Ladybug and Cat Noir. She had been hesitant to go at first. "Oh, come on, LB!" Cat had clued 2 weeks prior after an uneventful patrol. "You can't tell me you don't want to go to the biggest party of the season. It'll be a blast. The food is sure to be good, and I hear Jagged Stone and Clara Nightingale will give special performances." That had been the major point in favour for her wanting to go, but... "This is the mayor we're talking about," she said. "He's probably just wants the photo op to look good for his re-election next year. We're not even old enough to vote yet. We definitely shouldn't be supporting a candidate. Besides, wouldn't the press hound us all evening?" "Possibly, but that doesn't mean we have to talk to them." She rolled her eyes at his pun. "Won't we be underdressed?" She gestured at their suits. "But a cat can look like a king, milady," he replied, wriggling his eyebrows. "But it doesn't mean he has to lick his boots," she grumbled, glaring at him with arms crossed. "I can just wear a suit over my cat suit, but I'm sure your brilliant mind will find a way around the dress code easily enough." But... Then the sneaky cat had used his secret weapon. He dropped to his knees on the roof they were perched on, opened his eyes wide, and gave her a soft look. "Please, Ladybug, do it for me. It can be my Christmas present." She clasped his hands together in a pleading gesture. She sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose. "Fine, cat. But we go as each other's plus ones. And you better make sure you have something appropriate to wear and nothing I could possibly recognize." He chuckled at some hidden thought. "Not a problem, my lady. I'll even get something new to throw you off the scent." "Just remember," she had declared firmly, "this is just a friend date, nothing more." So that is how she found herself waiting outside the Grand Paris Hotel, waiting for an undoubtedly smug Cat Noir on what might be the coldest night of the year. Ladybug had to admit secretly that she had felt herself softening towards her kitty over the last year. She had ever since he had tried to be more respectful of her feelings, and eased up a bit on the flirting and the declarations. It also hadn't hurt that after that weird day where she had tried to practice confessing her feelings with Cat, he had started dropping by to visit her as Marinette. They would talk or play games or sometimes just sit together in comfortable silence. He seemed lonely, and she enjoyed his company, but she had to fight the little stirring she felt for him. It would just complicate matters between them, and her life was already complicated enough as it was. Plus, there's still Adrien. she mused, though the thought of a crush no longer warmed her enough to ignore the chill breeze that gushed snowflakes in little swirls around the street. Things were changing. She was changing. And that frightened her. The crowds of the guests to the mayor's Christmas party had thinned a bit as they were checked in, and she was feeling conspicuous waiting on the pavements outside the hotel. "Where is that cat?" She grumbled on her breath and was blowing on her fingers to warm them. Thankfully, she had worn her heavy woolen coat and gloves. It had been snowing for 2 days, and the temperature had dropped after the sun went down. Why does he seem to be late half the time? "Only fashionably so, my lady," said a familiar voice. She glanced over her shoulder to see Cat sliding down from the hotel roof on his staff, but it wasn't his entrance that wiped the frustration from her face. Cat Noir was impeccably dressed in a black suit, black shirt, and emerald silk tie knotted beneath his bell. His suit jacket had tails that somehow complemented the curve of his tail underneath, and instead of tucking his collapsed staff at the small of his back, he slipped it into his pocket. She secretly thought he looked very handsome, though what really got her attention was the vest underneath the jacket. It was a silver velvet and embroidered with vines and leaves. She knew those stitches, for she had made them. Cat Noir was wearing the vest he had commissioned from her, from Marinette, to a formal function. She had known he would, of course, but she couldn't help the soft smile that spread across her face as her cheeks burned ever so lightly. Of course, his eyes took in the smile, the blush, and the sudden change of her expression. His cheeky grin widened as he sauntered over to her. "Like what you see, LB?" She shook herself free from the mental stare she had fallen into at how well he was turned out, and by recognizing her handiwork. She rolled her eyes. "Only the vest, Cat Noir. I would recognize Marinette's work anywhere." His mouth popped open as one hand went to his chest to touch the silver embroidery. He looked so astonished that she couldn't help but laugh. "What, Cat? You think you're the only one who knows about Marinette's sewing skills? I'm the one who introduced you, remember?" He blushed and wouldn't meet her eyes, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'd forgotten about that," he mumbled before pulling himself together with a serious look at her. "Besides, Marinette is not just a seamstress. She's a fashion designer and very talented. This was a custom piece that she made for me. I think she'll be better than Gable Agreste once she graduates. I'm just glad she could fit me in." Ladybug felt the smile on her face grow wider with pleasure at the praise for her other self. She didn't know Cat felt that way about Marinette or her designs. He hadn't seen many of them after all. "I'm sure Marinette would appreciate you bragging about her, Cat," she said, then a mysterious idea took hold of her. "It's always nice when a boyfriend is proud of his girl." He blushed again and took up an affronted stance. "Marinette is just a friend." Ladybug rolled her eyes, though his words stung, thinking of another boy with blonde hair and green eyes who always said the same thing. Same song, second verse. Poor thing. Some girls are just trapped in the friend zone. He shot her a mischievous look of his own. "But since you're worried about my love life, my lady, I made sure she only worked with boyfriend material." "Ugh, that was unworthy of you, Cat Noir," she groaned. "And her too." "Then would my lady accept a humble token of apology?" He bowed slightly and held out a white rose. "Breaking tradition, are we?" she said with an eyebrow raised. "I've learnt my lesson. No red roses. A single white rose still symbolizes strong love, but it also represents humility and respect for the one gifted. I respect you, Ladybug, and I'm trying to be better at showing you that." Her heart melted a little as she took the rose in her fingers. She tucked it into her bun like one of the beaded hair sticks. "I respect you too, Cat. But can we go in now? They're waiting for us and it's cold out here." He opened his mouth to speak, but she cut him off. "And if you sing a certain holiday song, I will have the mayor forbid you entrance." "You know me too well, my lady." He chuckled and offered her his arm. His smirk spread to a wide smile when she took it. "Thanks for being my +1, she said, looking at him out of the corner of her eye. "I couldn't let you go stag, LB, but why didn't you ask your special boy?" He made little air quotes with his free hand before tucking it behind his back as the doorman checked their names off the guest list. "For one, secret identity, Cat. He doesn't know I'm Ladybug. And two, I couldn't put him at risk by letting Shadow Moth or anyone else think I've singled him out by asking him out as a hero." That, and she was tired of Adrien insisting they were just good friends. There were only so many times even she could hear that and still hope. "Still, you're Ladybug, hero of Paris. You could have asked anyone. Why me?" Boy, was she distracted this evening. She pulled herself back to the present with difficulty. He had been fishing for compliments and she knew it, but she wouldn't give him an inch. Oh, Viberium wasn't available. His ears dropped and he sighed sadly. She gave his arm a gentle squeeze. "But really, you asked for this as your Christmas present, and because we deserve to be here together. It's been a long year." "Yeah," he replied, ears perking up at her words. "It has." As he helped to remove her coat from the cloakroom attendant to take, she heard him give a low whistle. If Cat was dressed to the nines, then they were evenly matched. The bodice of the gown was similar to the cut of a suit, but in red velvet, so dark that it looked black in dim light. It had a look of a keepé with gold cords outlining the top of the bust. Instead of the traditional form-hugging skirt, it flowed fully to the floor in gauze layers of red and black, the topmost layer being red with large black spots. What probably caught Kat's eyes, though, was the large opening at the back that left everything from the top of her shoulder blades to the small of her back bare. She had designed the dress herself, and she and Tiki figured out how she could be dressed in it when she had transformed. Turns out that several of the past ladybugs were into fashion, and her Kwame had been excited to share ideas from throughout the ages. It had taken some doing, but the look on her partner's face? Priceless. He was completely gobsmacked. His mouth was hanging open and his eyes were wide with awe. Ladybug smirked at him over her shoulder and raised an eyebrow at him. "Oh, how the tables have turned. Like what you see, kitty cat?" "Meow," he whispered, but didn't move. He didn't even blink. He just continued to stare at her, slack-jawed, completely oblivious to anything going on around him. She was feeling smug about how he had responded to her dress, but this had gone on long enough. Reaching over, she closed his mouth with a finger before flicking his bell. He swallowed hard. She chuckled and threaded her arm through his to lead him into the ballroom. I never thought I would see the day when Cat Noir was struck speechless without Akuma being involved. He gave a strange throat-clearing cough, and when she glanced over at him, she noticed his entire face was red. "Cat got your tongue?" she asked, knowing she was laying it on thick, but it was too much fun not to tease him. The trademark smirk returned. He leaned in and whispered, "Only because I've got the most beautiful girl in the world on my arm tonight. Friend date or not?" Ladybug couldn't help but be pleased at his compliment, but she wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of showing it. She reached over and flicked his bell before smoothing his tie. "Flirt." "I could say the same about you tonight, my lady," he whispered, and she was blushing again. Great, silly cat. "Ah, Ladybug and Cat Noir, welcome," the mayor called to them as he came over. "I'm honored that you accepted my invitation." "Thank you for having us, Mayor Bourgeois," she said, offering her hand, and was surprised when the mayor bowed over it. Good thing she was used to Cat doing this, otherwise she would have been embarrassed. As it was, she had a hard time resisting the urge to push his honor back by his nose. As if he knew what was running through her mind, Cat Noir held out his own hand, and the mayor quickly took it to shake. We've never been much for mixing socially, but how could we decline the invitation to the mayor's Christmas party? They're practically legend. Well, I don't know about that, the mayor said with a slight smile. You two are the only legends I see around here tonight, but you have better things to do than talk to me. Please enjoy yourselves. And with that, he gave a slight bow of his head and walked away to where his wife and Chloe were holding court, surrounded by reporters and photographers. You know, Cat mused as he offered her his arm once more, the mayor isn't too bad a guy. He's just a little henpecked, she supplied with a grin. Her partner chuckled. I suppose that's a nice way of putting it, yeah. Though I think calling those two hens would be a disservice to chickens. A giggle bubbled out of her at his joke, and he smiled, pleased at making her laugh. Yes, coming together was a good idea. They both needed an evening to relax. That is, assuming that Shadow Moth would give it to them. At least he has Zoe now, she said softly. I think they kind of need each other. It would be pretty lonely otherwise. Cat sighed, one that she felt more than heard over the music and the chatter in the large room. Yeah, being lonely is the worst. Aw, is my kitty lonely? Only when I'm not with you, LB. She rolled her eyes and pulled her arm free to nudge him slightly on the shoulder. Oh, with Marinette, he groaned. You're not gonna let that go, are you, Bug? Hey, you opened up this wonderful opportunity to tease, and you expect me to go easy on you? Besides, she gave him a softer smile, Marinette is special. I'm glad she has a friend like you looking out for her. She needs all the help she can get. He must have heard something in her voice, because he stopped them in the middle of the room and grasped her shoulders. Ladybug, is there something going on with Marinette I should know about? She's my friend after all, and I want to be there for her. He really is a good friend, she thought, seeing the concern in his eyes. If only. No, not really, she explained hurriedly. She just has more on her plate than most people know about, and Ladybug paused, trying to think about how to phrase what she wanted to say without giving too much away. I think she's lonely too. Cat let go of her shoulders, a slight blush on his face. Ladybug, are you ever lonely? His words warmed her and made her heart pound in her chest. She swallowed back the lump that rose in her throat. It was true. She was lonely. Between being Ladybug and the Guardian, it seemed everything else in her life had fallen apart. The truth was, Cat was the only person in her life who could really understand her and what she was going through. When she allowed herself to admit it, she desperately wanted to confide in him. He was so kind and gentle, and he had always known how to support and encourage her. Even when they had fought Stoneheart so long ago, it had been Cat who had believed in her. He had believed that she could be a hero. Despite everything they had been through, he still did. Knowing that he cared about her on both sides of the mask, admired her talent and worried about her happiness meant so much. But could she take the risk? She hadn't seen Bunnocks in years, but surely she couldn't be cursed to be alone forever, right? Ladybug shook off her confusing thoughts and leaned over to flick his bell again. No more worrying tonight, she declared. It's Christmas Eve, and bearing Shadowmoth acclimatizing someone poor soul left standing under the mistletoe, we should enjoy ourselves. He gave her a long look, his emerald eyes boring into hers with an intensity she had never seen before, and she knew he hadn't missed her evasions. He took her hand in his with a gentle squeeze. I'm here for you two, you know. However you let me. Ladybug could feel the heat rise in her cheeks. Oh, how she wished she could tell him. Could she let him in? Would she regret it if she did? Would she have to face that broken boy with the glacier stare again? Or would that nightmare be smoothed away by black-clad arms and silly puns? He could share the burden, and she wouldn't be fighting alone in everything else she did. To know she had someone she didn't have to be strong and perfect for would be such a release. Someone to hold her when she could no longer hold herself together. She needed that, and she could be there for him too. A partnership in every sense of the word. But did she dare? She could feel her fingers trembling in his, and she squeezed them to make them stop. He leaned down slightly. "May I have the pleasure of a dance with the loveliest lady in the room?" She smiled. But his entire face lit up when she nodded and let him lead them onto the dance floor. The way his hand cradled her waist sent ripples of warmth from her core to her extremities. His gaze was gentle, and his smile was soft and sweet, as if he was holding his whole world in his hands. He has been waiting for me all this time, even when I pushed him away, she thought, the ache in her heart growing for him all the more as he led her through the steps of the dance. Normally, if she wasn't in charge, she'd panic a bit, but here, in his arms, with his protective gaze watching over her, she felt completely safe for the first time since she'd become the guardian. It was such a wonderful feeling that she felt the tension ease out of her shoulders and the clenched knot in her stomach to fade away. What quirk of a ladybug look that had brought them to this moment she would never know, but she wasn't going to waste it. "I'm going to make this our best night ever," Ladybug decided. "We need it. Both of us need to take the night off." So they did. They enjoyed some wonderful food, including some cute Christmas tree shapes macaroons she knew came from her parents' bakery. Since she really loved to dance, she even asked her kitty for a few more dances, which made his smile so wide she was sure it must hurt. However, he stuck to his new policy of boundaries and respectfully declined the slow dances, much to her growing disappointment. They enjoyed the music from their favourite performers and could even talk to Jagged Stone for a while before the press swarmed towards them, leaving the rock star to slip away backstage. "Ladybug! Cat Noir!" They were standing at the foot of the stairs to the stage when the group of reporters and photographers descended. "Great," Cat muttered under his breath. "Gossip piranhas. They probably got hung up with Chloe and Audrey and the other VIPs and finally broke free. Do you want to try for a quick exit, milady?" "I don't like this, but we can take command of the situation," she said with a sigh and a roll of her eyes. "I was just starting to relax and enjoy myself. I will not let them ruin our night." "Ladybug, Cat Noir, any word on when Shadowmoth will be brought to justice? Any special Christmas plans? Any New Year's resolutions you might want to share?" Ladybug stuck 2 fingers in her mouth and whistled shrilly, drawing everyone's attention and quietening the scoop-hungry mob. "Okay, folks, we don't want to be stuck answering questions all evening." She glanced at her partner, showed 2 fingers and pointed between them. He nodded. "Cat Noir and I will answer 2 questions, but that will be it. Yes, Nadia?" "Ladybug, any news on the whereabouts or identity of Shadowmoth?" The reporter held out her phone to catch her reply while photographers snapped away. "Way to go for the big scoop on the holiday, Nadia," she thought grimly, as if that couldn't kill the mood. "We are following up every lead we get," she replied smoothly, struggling to keep her shoulders from tensing up again at the thought. She felt Cat shift into a slightly more defensive stance. She had to move this along. "Next question?" "Cat Noir!" An older man in the back called, waving his hand. "Yes, you in the blue suit at the back?" Cat said, wearing what Ladybug recognized as his professional smile. "What are your Christmas plans?" Well, my Christmas wish would be to spend it with my lady here, but I do plan to drop in on some friends and spend some time at the children's hospital to spread some holiday cheer. She pointed to a young man in the black jacket and red tie. Yes? Ladybug, anyone special in your life? Why, are you asking? That got a laugh from the crowd, and she saw a cat smirk out of the corner of her eye. But seriously, aside from my partner here, when would I have time for that kind of thing? Life goes on for superheroes too, you know. Akumas keep us pretty busy. Last one, guys, Cat rolled. Better make it a good one. Yes, you in the red dress. Cat, look up. Young lady was grinning widely, pointing upwards, hopping up and down with excitement. Ladybug saw her partner look up and stiffen. She too looked up and saw the garlands that were decorating the top of the stage were festooned with kissing bowls covered in mistletoe. Her heart fluttered and her stomach tied itself in knots again. I know I have feelings for Cat, and tonight was definitely shifted the odds more in his favour, but not here, not in front of everyone. Kiss her, the young lady cried out, and of course all cameras in the room locked onto them as the crowd of reporters and curious partygoers took up the chant, Kiss her, kiss her. Ladybug looked at her partner with a twinge of guilt. Several months ago, he would have jumped at the chance and given all sorts of reasons why it was a good idea, but he'd been so sensitive to her boundaries lately, she couldn't even remember the last time he called her bugaboo. I can't believe I miss it. Cat smiled and waved his hands to quiet the crowd. Look, guys, I know it's bad luck not to kiss under the mistletoe, and believe me, as a black cat of Paris, I don't need any more bad luck. That got a chuckle from the crowd. But I would never pressure my lady to do something she wouldn't want to do, and I would never kiss any lady without asking for permission first. After all, I'm a genteel cat. He turned to look at her, and she saw a flash of longing in his eyes, quickly smothered by kindness. She held out his hand to her. May I kiss your hand, my lady? She laid her hand softly in his, unable to hide the soft smile that sprang from her heart as he bowed over her hand and gently pressed his lips to her bare knuckles. Without the gloves her suit normally gave, the touch was more intimate than she expected, and it sent tingles along her nerves, making her blush. But more than that was the longing in his eyes when he released her hand. Her sweet kitty had suppressed his own hopes and dreams of years in order to respect her boundaries. If she had ever doubted his love for her, she couldn't after tonight. Well, that's all for tonight, folks, he declared with a wide smile. Here's wishing for everyone to have a safe and happy holiday. The paparazzi snapped a few last pictures before drifting off, leaving Ladybug to let out a sigh of relief. Cat putting a comforting hand on her shoulder. Sorry, LB. I didn't notice the time bomb up there, and I know you hate being cornered like that. Ladybug put her hand over his on her shoulder. Thanks, Cat. Could we go somewhere? I think there's something we need to discuss, and I don't know about you, but I'm not sure this is my kind of party anymore. Sure thing, he said, giving her a worried look. Go and get your coat, and I'll pay our respects. See you in 5? He gave her shoulder a last squeeze before sauntering off, leaving her to feeling exposed and a little cold without him at her side for the first time since they arrived. She retrieved her coat and gloves and waited for him in the lobby. He joined her in a few minutes later and was startled when she took his arm before he had a chance to offer it. Where do you want to go? He said uncertainly as they stepped into the snowy night. He was rubbing the back of his neck, telling her he was nervous as clearly as if he had spoken. She was too, and tried to hide her fiddling with her gloves. Could we just walk for a while? My current suit is not meant for swinging about in the snow. I'll bet. He chuckled, and she felt him press her hand into the crook of his arm just a little. But it looks beautiful. How did you manage it? Tiki says that our suits are on some level at least a manifestation of what we want. Since I wanted something fancier, I just had to practice concentrating on what I wanted it to look like. Now that I've seen what you can do, I can't help but wonder how you ended up in the spotted bodysuit, he said, and she could hear a grin in his voice. Not that it doesn't suit you as well. She chuckled at his lame joke and nudged him with her elbow. Even his terrible puns didn't bother her tonight, and it was just so nice to have someone close. You know, LB, I'm really sorry about the whole mistletoe thing. I really didn't see them. I know, Kat. It's okay. You handled it well, by the way. Thanks. I needed to say sorry too, she whispered, looking down at her feet as he ambled down the pavement. I didn't answer your question earlier. Which question? She sighed and fought past the anxiety that threatened to choke her once more. You asked if I was ever lonely, and I didn't answer you. You know you never need to answer anything too personal. I am lonely. I have been for a while, and it's like this whole thing. She waved her free hand around in the air before them. Being Ladybug? Being the guardian? It's all become too much. And I don't have anyone to help me. The last was said on a desperate sob, and she couldn't stop the tears from streaming down her face. Kat pulled her into the mouth of a nearby alley and wrapped her in a tight hug as she cried. It feels like the more I have to do, the less I can manage. My personal life feels like it's falling apart. My friends think I'm flaking out on them constantly. I have to lie to my family and teachers all the time to explain why I'm never where I'm supposed to be. I'm struggling to keep up with schoolwork and with the Kwamis. There's translating the grimoire, planning for university, and forget about dating. Only 2 guys have ever really seen me for me, and one I didn't see that way, and the other I couldn't stand it when I couldn't tell him where I kept disappearing to on our date. That disaster only lasted about 3 weeks. I just can't take it anymore, Kat. I'm not strong enough to do this alone. She hadn't meant to break down like this, but she had told herself she was going to be honest, and when she started, all the build-up emotions came pouring out of her in a torrent along with her tears. He just stood there, holding her while she cried herself out in the snowy alley. It took far longer than she wanted, but she had to get this out before it broke her. It's okay, little bug, he murmured into her hair. I know what you're going through. You're not alone. I'm here. I'll always be here, no matter what. She heard him let out a soft sigh. I know I'm not the one you want, but no. She whispered fiercely, wrapping her arms tighter around his waist in fear that he would leave her. You've always been here for me, and I couldn't see you that way because I was in love with Adrien, but loving from a distance is no comfort, and he has never seen me anyway, and I've been so afraid of the future, and Bunnix showed me where you had been traumatized, and I had to fight you because you found out my identity. All of this came out in a rush of words, and she was pretty sure she was babbling, but he just held her, her fortress and protector against all her fears and failings. She looked up at him and saw tears flowing down his face. You've been so sweet and understanding, trying so hard to show how much you respect me, and that just made me love you more. But I'm afraid that now that you won't trust me the same and not love me anymore because of how I treated you. Eyes closed, Cat stood firm under the weight of her confessions, his strong, gentle hug never wavering. He was silent for so long that her heart felt like it was breaking. Finally, he opened his eyes and looked at her with such love that she couldn't breathe. That's a lot to process, and someday I'll need some clarification about some of it. But I have loved you since you defeated Stoneheart. When you took on Hawkmoth Avatar, when you knew how to defeat that stone monster, and then you threw yourself off a tower with no hesitation to rescue that girl. That was when I fell in love with you. All of that was you, not the mask, my lady. It's true, I may not know your name, your hobbies, or what's on your Christmas list, but your actions have always told me you're brave, brilliant, caring person who constantly put others first. That makes you a true lady in every sense of the word, spots or not spots. I was selfish before and really was more focused on myself and my feelings than on you, and for that, I can't apologize enough. You deserved a better partner and a better friend. I can't blame you for pushing me away, no matter how much it hurts. I've always wanted to know more, but I'm old enough now to understand the risk better, and I won't press it. But I think I'll always love you, Ladybug. You deserve better than me, and I'm sorry, she whispered. Let's forgive each other, okay? He gave her shoulders a little shake and a weepy giggle snuck out of her. Okay, but there's something I need to do. How can I help, Elby? He had always been there for her. No matter what she had done to him, he still wanted to be there for her, even now. He still loved her. She didn't deserve him and his beautiful soul, but she needed him. She had to have one person she could be honest with, could be weak with, someone who would love her, with or without the mask. She had to know. He had a right to, and if Bunnock showed up again, they would face that future together. Pulling away from him slowly, she ran a finger along the silver embroidery of the vest that she had made for him. Could he love Marinette the awkward, Marinette the babbler, Marinette the insecure, without the lure of the mask? She had to know, otherwise she wouldn't be able to hold out much longer. Time to push my ladybug luck, she thought, and swallowed back her fear. Tiki? Masks off, please, she whispered, and the light pink bathed her face. She could hear him gasp, and felt his heart hammering under her hands. He had closed his eyes at the first sign of the pink light and held them tightly shut. Are you sure, my lady? His voice was so hesitant, and she could feel him trembling against her, but whether it was excitement or anxiety or something worse, she couldn't tell. I need someone to know both sides of me. I want it to be you. I just hope you will still love me as Marinette. Her name was barely a breath on her lips, but his eyes snapped open. Cat stared at her, drinking her in, with a look of awe on his face. Is it really you, princess? He clasped her on the shoulders, as if afraid she would be whisked away from him. When she nodded timidly, he pulled her into him again. Lifting her off her feet, he spun her around in a giddy circle, and his beautiful laughter rang out in the dark. When he finally stopped, she could focus on his face, and she saw he was still crying, but this time they were tears of joy. Of course it was you, he whispered, pressing his forehead against hers as his claw gloves gently cradled her face. Oh, Marinette, you've made me so happy. I don't think there are words to say how much I love you. Both sides of you. I mean, you were teasing me earlier about, well, you, but you didn't know how much I struggled against feelings for, well, You! I'm not making much sense, am I? She giggled in relief, as well as how complicated things must seem to him. But he still loved her. He had forgiven her for how she had treated him and still wanted to be with her, even without the mask. Marinette knew she didn't deserve him, but his acceptance had sent her heart soaring feather light for the first time since she became the guardian. Cat chuckled lightly, never taking his arms from around her. I'd offered to de-transform myself, but I think this is enough to wrap our heads around for a while, don't you? Her cheeks burned. Thankfully, the darkness and the shadows hid her blushes. I'll admit to being curious, but you're probably right. Just let me know when you think you're ready, princess, he murmured softly, and with such a soft, loving tone that any fear she still held of rejection melted. There will always be some surprises then too, if I'm not mistaken, but I can wait as long as you need. Thank you, Kitty, she whispered. Always, little bug. You know, I was a little disappointed that you were being so respectful that we didn't get a slow dance, she said. Her smile felt wide and real for the first time in a year. Or a proper kiss. His eyes lit up at her words, and she laughed as his cat ears twitched and his tail wrapped itself around her ankle as he purred. His cheeks darkened and she chuckled nervously. I guess it will take a while to get used to my sweet, quiet princess being an outspoken partner. Cat's smile was as warm as his cheeks, but the longing in his eyes was unmistakable and sent tingles through every inch of her. But I know I'll love you all the more for it, Marinette. Then, may I kiss you, my kitty? My lady? You never need to ask. The lips met, and the forest fire of emotions that burnt through her destroyed the fears and the uncertainties and the failings of the past, leaving her with just the strong warmth of his arms and the assurance of his love for her. When they parted, he rubbed his nose against hers and she smiled. May I walk you home, princess? Of course, my prince, she replied, and was thrilled when he looked down at her with a giddy grin. Marinette took his arm once more, and they walked back into the swirling snow and the Christmas lights beyond. Thank you for listening to part 2 of the Mistletoe Chronicles Christmas Confession. So make sure you smash that like button. I can't speak now. Make sure you smash that like button, comment down below what you think of it, and subscribe so you do not miss out on part 3 that will be coming out next Wednesday. And send Jheqia some love over in the description down below. And I will speak to you soon. Bye.